In my recent honor mode campaign, this build was easily the most consistently powerful throughout the entire playthrough and made a great frontliner for my bow barn build that I showcased in the last video. If you want something easy to play and easy to build while remaining strong from early game to late game, this might be the build for you. It's also a great build for Karlach if you like to keep your companions' builds consistent with their lore. This is the Barbarian Thrower.
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire. Souls go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
So there are already a lot of throwing builds out there for Baldur's Gate 3, so it's not like this build is anything new. The main power of a throwing build comes from the Tavern Brawler feat, which did get nerfed in honor mode, but even with the nerf, I still found this build to be incredibly strong. Typically there are two types of throwing builds, either an Eldritch Knight fighter build or a Berserker Barbarian. This build goes down the Barbarian route, which focuses more on damage mitigation and controlling enemies. The Eldritch Knight version is great too, with a bigger focus on DPS, especially at levels 11 and 12, but I'll leave that for a different video. The core of this build focuses on combining Enraged Throw from the Berserker Barbarian subclass with the extra bonus action from Rogue's Thief subclass to give you up to 4 throws each turn by level 8, while potentially knocking 2 enemies prone. For my build, I went Barbarian 8 and Thief 4, which gives you access to 3 feats, extra attack, and an extra bonus action. I also found that Feral Instinct from Barbarian level 7 felt surprisingly strong because the +3 to initiative tends to let you act first before most other enemies. But that said, if you do want to go the most efficient version of this build, what I'd recommend instead is going Barbarian 5, Thief 4, and Champion 3. You do miss out on the extra initiative from Barb level 7, and you do miss out on one of the feats as well, but the only feat a throwing build really needs is Tavern Brawler. In return, you'll get an increase to your crit chance and action surge from Fighter level 2. If you're using a lot of crit gear in the late game, or if you're relying heavily on spells like Hold Person or Hold Monster that can guarantee critical hits, you could also consider going Barbarian 9, Thief 3 for a huge increase to your critical damage. Let's talk about leveling order. For build 1, I'd recommend leveling Barbarian up to 5, picking up the Berserker subclass at level 3, and the Tavern Brawler feat at level 4. Then multi-classing into Rogue and leveling it to 4, taking the Thief subclass at level 3, and an ability improvement at level 4 to get your strength up to 20. Finally, put your last few levels back in Barbarian for your final feat. I took the Dual Wielder feat, but depending on your gear that might not make sense for you. We'll talk more in depth on that in the feat section later on. For build 2, it stays the exact same through level 9. You'll just be swapping out those last few levels in Barbarian for levels in Fighter instead, and taking the Champion subclass. If you don't have any returning weapons to throw, you could opt into the Eldritch Knight subclass instead to bind your favorite throwing weapon, but there are plenty of powerful returning weapons in this game, and I'll make sure to mention them later on in the equipment section of the video. Build 3 is pretty niche, but if you can crit frequently enough, it's capable of doing some absolutely ridiculous damage. This build also starts the same, leveling Barbarian to 5 and then Rogue to 3 for the Thief subclass. Then just put your remaining levels back into Barbarian. For starting stats, you have a lot of flexibility. The most important stat to go for is Strength 17, which you can increase to 18 at level 4 with your Tavern Brawler feat. Other than that, the most important stats are Dexterity and Constitution, Dexterity for Initiative and Armor class, and Constitution for HP. Barbarians also get extra armor equal to their Constitution modifier when they're not wearing any armor, but typically you'll get at least the same value by just wearing medium armor instead. My recommendation would be to go 17 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 8 Charisma. Dexterity 14 is ideal for most medium armors. If you're going to be using light or no armor, you can swap out Dexterity to 16 and then Constitution down to 14. If you want more than minimal charisma, you can take out points of wisdom and constitution, but I'd strongly recommend keeping strength at 17 and dexterity at 14 or higher. If you're new to Barbarian, keep in mind that heavy armor heavily impedes your rage, so you'll want to be sticking to medium armor and lower. For feat selection, my normal go-to would be Tavern Brawler, Ability Improvement, and Dual Wielder in that order. Tavern Brawler is a must because it increases the accuracy and damage of your throwing attacks by your strength modifier, while also giving you a +1 to strength to get your strength to 18. Ability improvement can be used to get your strength to 20, but it might not be necessary if you're using the Mighty Cloth or relying heavily on strength elixirs to get your strength to 20 or beyond. Dual Wielder is a bit niche, but it can be really strong depending on your throwing weapon of choice in the late game. Nyrolna is the strongest throwing weapon in the game, and it's a versatile weapon, which means with the Dual Wielder feat, you can equip both Nyrolna and a dagger in your offhand for some bonus stats. The Dual Wielder feat also gives you a +1 to your armor class while dual wielding, which is nice as well. Another feat to consider is Alert. It doesn't have anything to do with the build. Alert is just really powerful on any build in the game because the massive boost to initiative is enough to let you act first, even before most bosses. Finally, if you need an extra feat option, Tough is okay, and it will give you a decent boost to your hit points. Now let's talk about equipment. Just like the last video, I'm not going to give the location for every piece of gear that I mentioned, but I will put a link down in the description below to both the Google spreadsheet and the Baldur's Gate wiki, where you can easily find more information on each piece of equipment. Ring of Flinging can be bought from Aaron in the Druid's Grove, and it gives a 1d4 bonus to your throwing damage. It's pretty cheap, and it's a really strong boost to your early game damage. Returning Pike can be purchased from Grat the Trader at the Goblin Camp. It's an enchanted pike that returns to you after being thrown. Normally this should be your go-to throwing weapon all the way up until Act 3 when you get a few new options. The Sparkle Hands can be found in a southeast section of the swamp that's pretty easy to overlook. These gloves give you 2 lightning charges on hit with an unarmed attack. Although it says unarmed attack, you'll still get the lightning charges for successful throwing attacks. I didn't find this to be true with other pieces of unarmed equipment, so this might just be a bug. Bracers of Defense can be good if you're not wearing armor for your throwing build. You'll miss out on some damage and accuracy compared to the Sparkle Hands, but receive a +2 bonus to your armor class in return. Haste Helm grants you 3 turns of momentum at the start of combat for a helpful boost to your movement. Gloves of Uninhibited Kashigo will give you a 1d4 bonus to your throw attack damage. If you're feeling sweaty, you can grab the Speedy Light feat and dash before combat to gain lightning charges without wasting an in-combat action. In Act 2, Callous Glow Ring can be procced easily by casting light on your throwing weapon of choice each long rest. By doing this, every attack will be illuminated to deal bonus radiant damage. I haven't tested these next 2 on a throwing build, so it's possible that they won't work properly, but Killer's Sweetheart and Surgeon's Subjugation Amulet are both really powerful items that work especially well when combined together. Lightning Jabber deals bonus lightning damage when thrown. The Mighty Cloth gives you a +2 strength up to 20, which can be an easy way to get 20 strength before your second feat. Cloak of Elemental Absorption is a really nice cloak for barbarians. Rage gives you resistance to physical damage, but not magical damage, so this cloak can be extremely useful if you get hit by a powerful spell. In Act 3, an important note to make is that you should now have access to Cloud Giant elixirs at a variety of traders around Baldur's Gate. This elixir increases your strength to 27 until your next long rest, which is absurdly strong to begin with, but gets even better when combined with Tavern Brawler. Nyrolna is the strongest throwing weapon in the game, and it's very easy to miss, so if you're unfamiliar with it but want to grab it, you might want to look it up. Nyrolna is a legendary enchanted trident that deals bonus thunder damage and even more thunder damage in an AoE when thrown. It also glows, which is great for Callous Glow Ring, increases your movement, gives you immunity to fall damage, and it returns to you when thrown. This weapon is absolutely absurd for throw builds. If you pick up the Dual Wielder feat, you can equip both Nyrolna and an offhand weapon at the same time, as well as get a +1 bonus to your armor class. The 2 best weapons to equip as an offhand here are Rhapsody and Bloodthirst. Rhapsody can give you a +3 bonus to both your damage and attack rolls, but the attack roll boost will mostly be wasted on a throwing build because your accuracy from Tavern Brawler is already insane. Bloodthirst increases your crit chance and increases your armor class by 1 if equipped in your offhand, which is pretty perfect for a build like this. Ballast armor is both insanely strong and bugged at the moment. This armor makes enemies within 2 meters vulnerable to piercing damage if they aren't already resistant or immune to it. In my playthrough, the aura frequently wouldn't work, so I had to disable it and then enable it in the passive bar. I also found that many if not all enemies that were resistant to piercing damage would still be made vulnerable anyways, even though it specifically says otherwise in the description. Either way, even without bugs, this armor is crazy because it doubles the piercing damage from your throws if you get up close. In my composition, it was even better because I was able to buff both Karlach and my archer's damage. If you don't want to abuse the ballast armor, Armor of Agility is still a very tanky medium armor. Helmet of Grit can be a really fun item to play around with if you're either getting low frequently in combat or if you're feeling cheesy and you intentionally want to put yourself under 50% HP. This item gives you an extra bonus action when you're under 50% health, which you can use for an extra enraged throw each turn while raging. If you want a bow to equip for stats, the dead shot increases your crit chance. Saravok's horned helmet increases your crit chance. Dwarven Thrower is a niche but powerful throwing weapon that deals bonus damage if you're a dwarf and even more if the target is large or bigger. Even if you aren't a dwarf, race-specific gear like this can be paired with Disguise Self to still get the passive, but with that said, even if you are a dwarf, Nirolna is so ridiculous that I'd still recommend using it instead. Unflinching Protector Amulet can force an attack on a nearby ally to miss once per short rest. And that pretty much does it for the video. If you enjoyed the video and want to leave a like and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. I've been having a lot of fun with Baldur's Gate recently, and I'm looking forward to making more of these. Thanks for watching.